Hello everyone, welcome. My name's Adriana. Both my kids are sleeping now, so I have some time to talk about what I knit last month. I finished 2 projects last month and I'm working on 3 currently. So I'll talk about all of those. The first thing I finished in 2024 was this beautiful, beautiful cabled sweater. This is the Arctic Light sweater by Veronica Lindberg. It is knit top down and it's a raglan style sweater. You can see that there's some really pretty details along the raglan increases. I knit the size large and it is the same front and back. There's no short rows to raise the neck at all, but I have not found that to be an issue while wearing this. I think it fits great. I used 2 yarns held together to create this. The first yarn, the main yarn, was the Briggs and Little Regal line in the color 3 bleached white. It's a 2-ply yarn. And the reason I chose that specific yarn is because Veronica Lindberg calls for Sadness Garn Double Sunday yarn, and the weight to meterage ratio was very, very similar to the Briggs and Little Regal line. So that's why I decided to try that yarn instead. And I loved it. I really loved it. I held it with the Drops Kid Silk Mohair in just their white color. And I love how the fabric turned out. I think they look really nice together. Yeah, I love everything about this sweater. I didn't end up doing a gauge swatch for this. I just started knitting the neck, and I had to knit it on a slightly larger needle. I think she asked for a 3mm needle and I only had a 3.25. And for the neck, she gives us like a certain amount of rows to complete before starting the body. And then she also says what the length should be that you get. And after I'd completed the amount of rows she said to do, I was not at the length that she said it needed to be. So that made me think that my knitting was probably tighter than hers. So for the body, I didn't even start with the needle size that she asked for in the pattern. I went up half a needle size. I know I should have done it like a proper gauge swatch in the pattern and everything, but I figured I wanted it to be kind of oversized anyway. So I wasn't worried about it becoming too big or anything. The only thing I was worried about was I ended up doing a 5.5mm needle. And as I started knitting the body, I was worried that it would be too holey, like you could see too much through the fabric. But maybe when I was like halfway done the yoke, I kind of tried it on over my neck and it looked just like a regular sweater. It looked fine. So I went ahead and did that for the rest of the body, and I love how it turned out. I did take measurements, but I didn't check to like compare to what her measurements were for her sizes that she has in her patterns. But I am quite happy with how it turned out. I knit everything exactly to pattern, except for I ended the body before the ribbing. I ended the body, I think 3 inches before she says to in the pattern. I knew I wanted this to be cropped. I wanted it to be something that I could wear with jeans, but I didn't need to tuck it in. And I don't like it if my sweaters go too far down, like maybe to my hips. I want them to be a bit higher up. I like tucking it into like my high-waisted jeans. So I wanted it to be something that I could wear without needing to tuck it in. And then I also thought if it worked, I could wear this like over a dress or something. And you know, if it's like a little bit too long, it's like an awkward length and you just look like a box basically. That's not what I wanted with this. So I knew I wanted it to be cropped. I was pretty worried while I was knitting the sleeves because because I did knit the whole body first and then the sleeves. As I was knitting the sleeves, I kept going back and forth of being like, it's long enough. Like, it's not too cropped, right? Like, it's long enough. And then the next I'd look at it and be like, that's way too short. Like, I'm going to have to rip out all of this twisted ribbing, the Italian bind off that I did. I'm going to have to rip it all out, knit a couple more inches. And then the next I'd be like, no, it's long enough. In the end, it did end up being long enough. I think I still prefer the look of it tucked into jeans. I guess I just like that look better. But yeah, it's definitely not too cropped. So I'm happy about that. It did grow a decent amount in blocking. I think because of the cables, they just kind of relaxed a bit after being soaked. I think the arms grew a couple inches each. I did knit the arms, I think 1 centimeter longer than what the pattern said to do. Just by accident. I did it on the first one and then I matched it on the second one. So yeah, body is 3 inches shorter than what the pattern says, and then the arms are 1 centimeter longer than what the pattern says. This was my first time. No, it wasn't my first time doing Italian bind off. It was my first time doing Italian bind off with mohair. And I started doing the bind off with like both yarns held together, like with the tapestry needle going in and out, whatever. And very quickly realized, because it was the bottom hem that I did first, which like that's a lot of yarn that you have to break off and weave in and out. I think it took me 2.5 hours to do this whole bottom hem. And I started with having both yarns together, weaving them in and out. And that mohair just kept getting snagged and tangled and caught. And it's such long yarn that like every single pass through, it would get messed up. So I was like, I'm cutting it and just weaving in the end into the sweater, and I'm just binding off with just the wool yarn. And that went way better. I did that again for the sleeves. I didn't even try doing it with the mohair on the sleeves. I just snipped that and did just the wool, and I think it went great. I love everything about this sweater. This is like, I'm like, how am I going to beat this? Like, what am I going to knit next that's better than this? I love this. I've worn it a few times and I don't find it super scratchy. I do find it quite warm. When I first finished this, like before I blocked it, it was just like off the needles done. I was so excited, tried it on, and while I was like trying it on and like, you know, fiddling with it and stuff, my son dropped a whole tub of yogurt and it exploded all over the ground. So I quickly cleaned it up while I was wearing this. And after I was done, I was really sweaty and I was like, oh wow, like if I'm that hot from just a little bit of, you know, wiping yogurt up off the floor, like this is going to be super hot. But the other times I've worn this, it's been fine. And I haven't been too hot in it, which is nice. And I haven't been too itchy from the mohair or the wool at all. It's very nice and soft, especially after I blocked it. I found that it got really, I don't know, kind of flowy. It's not so stiff anymore. I love it. Doing the yoke and all of the raglan increases, I had to really read the pattern, have it open in front of me, and kind of be counting my stitches, and it was very focused knitting. And by the end of that, when you have so many stitches on your needles, it was getting to be kind of a drag, like, okay, are we done the increases yet? And then as soon as I started doing the body, I was able to read the stitches, memorize the pattern, and that made it fly. Like I was going so quick to the point where I was like, oh, I should check to measure to see if I've reached the point that I want to stop. And that first measurement, I was like, okay, I think I need to stop. And I was kind of sad because I was like, oh, I didn't realize I did my last like baubles when I did them, or I didn't realize I did my last like braid cable when I did it. So that was a little bit sad actually, that I couldn't like savor the ending of this part of the pattern, because the arms have cables, but not the same as the front and back. So I was a little bit sad, like, oh, it's over already? Yeah, and then the arms went pretty quick as well, especially, you know, once you're decreasing, then it goes so quick. If you'll remember, I did mess up the first of this cable design on the arm, the first round of it. I didn't do it properly. And I was worried that it'd be super like noticeable, but I don't think so. I guess if you know it's there and you look for it, you'll see it, but if not, then maybe you don't. The only kind of issue I had with this sweater was once it was done, I had 4 holes, 2 in under each arm, like at the point where you pick up the underarm stitches for like, so there was like one here and then one on the other side here, and then same on the other sleeve. So I had 4 holes that obviously I didn't think looked great. I wore it once with the holes and I was like, maybe it's just one of those things that like, it's under your arm, no one's gonna notice. But I noticed it, like just like looking in a mirror and moving around, I was like, oh, I can kind of see it. And then when it was just like laying flat, I was like, okay, the holes are pretty noticeable. So and you know what, with one of the sleeves, I didn't do anything special for trying to eliminate the holes before they even got there, like with picking up the stitches for under the arm. But on the other side, I had followed a video tutorial on how to eliminate that. And I still got some pretty big holes. Like instead of it being one big hole, it was like kind of segmented into 3 medium holes, I guess. So in the end, I did go in with just some extra yarn and close up the holes. The first 2 I did from the inside because my thinking was do it from the inside because you don't want it to be seen on the outside, I guess. Like you don't want to see yarn, I guess, where it's not supposed to be, I guess. Like it doesn't look like it's part of the pattern. So I was like, yeah, just do it from the inside, like through the backs of all the stitches, whatever. But it looked so bad on the right side. Like it pulled the stitches in weird directions. So I ended up taking both of those back out after I had weaved them in and been like, yep, this is done. I took both of them back out, and then from the right side, I closed up the holes. And it looks much better. There is like a little bit of pulling on, like you can maybe see there's a little bit of pulling, like it's pulling the raglan increased design kind of away from the line it's supposed to be in, or it should be in. But it's not nearly as bad as it was when I had done it from the wrong side. I think that's all I want to say about this sweater. I just love it. I had it just sitting out on like a table for a solid week after I finished it, just because it was so pretty to look at it. I do have it in my closet now. And it's kind of cool because I wasn't intentionally doing this, but I knit a sweater, a cabled sweater that would replace a cabled sweater that I had in my closet that obviously I didn't make. And it was one that I had it because I wanted to have a cable sweater, but I didn't like how it fit. So it was in my closet, but I never actually used it. Whereas this one, I made it and I love how it fits and I'm going to use it. So I was able to like swap out something from my closet for something handmade and something that I will use. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say. So Veronica Lindbergh, her YouTube channel is Kutuba Kika. She has a whole video tutorial, I think it's in 3 parts, of everything you need to know about knitting this sweater. I loved it. That made it so easy. All of the cables, I just watched her do them, and then I was able to do them. I was able to watch how she like put the sleeve stitches on hold and picked up stitches under the arm. I was able to see how she like folded down her collar and knit that down. That was so, so helpful. And it made me want to try more of her patterns that have video tutorials with them, because that made the whole process just so, so easy. I guess this was also a bit of a redemption for my relationship with the Briggs & Little yarn. I made my Wednesday sweater with the Briggs & Little brand yarn and didn't like working with it, didn't like the finished result of how it looked. So I wasn't sure if I would want to use it again or what. And I am so glad I tried it again, because this is just like, it's perfect. It's exactly what I wanted this sweater to be. And since the weight to meterage or yardage ratio is very similar to the double Sunday weight to meterage yardage ratio, now I have a yarn that is like really easily accessible to me, that if I see other patterns made with or intended to use the double Sunday with, I can just use the Briggs & Little Regal yarn, which is really cool. So I think definitely their Regal line I will use again. The next project I finished was heavily inspired by Marlene from Marlene Knits, her broken rope socks that she made. I don't know when she made them, but I was watching her like everything I made in 2023 video. And I had some yarn that I knew I wanted to be a sock, but I didn't know what pattern to use with it. I didn't want it to be just a stockinette sock. I actually haven't done one of those yet, but I'm worried that just a plain stockinette sock won't like compress to my leg and it'll just kind of slide down. Anyway, I didn't want to do like a stockinette sock. I didn't want to do a ribbed sock because I've done a few of those for myself. I wanted to do something that had some visual interest, I guess, and that wouldn't be like too intensive, like with a bunch of cables or something. I didn't want to do that. Anyway, she showed her broken rope socks that she made, which is from a pattern by Summer Lee. Essentially, it's a striped broken rib sock. And I saw her socks and I was like, that's exactly what I want to do with my socks. So these are the socks that I ended up making. I knit these on 2.5 millimeter needles, and I did not follow the same pattern that Marlene did. I just did like, because I know how many stitches I like to have for the circumference. I know I've only tried a couple types of heels, but I knew that I wanted this type of heel for this sock, like a heel flap with a round heel turn, gusset, and then a wedge toe. I knew that's what I wanted for this sock. And I knew that the pattern that she followed was just broken rib. So I just did a broken rib pattern with some striping on it. I didn't follow the pattern that she did. I just made it up myself. But obviously you can see this was heavily inspired by that Summer Lee sock pattern. I ended up doing this with, oh, it was another Briggs & Little yarn. This is their sport yarn. I think it's their Dura Sport yarn. I don't remember what color this is. I don't have it. I don't remember what color this, the main color is, and I don't think I kept the label. And then the gray, like the contrast stripes, are just leftovers from another sock that I did, but it's the same line of yarn. It's the Briggs & Little Dura Sport. It's whatever kind of gray color they had. If I can find the tags for them, I'll update it in my Ravelry project page for this. But yeah, basically I just did broken rib. So like knit one round and then knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. The next round knit. And I did that in sections of 10. So 10 repeats of like knit, and then the next row knit, purl. And then you just do 10 rows of that. Then I would do 2 rows of the contrast, making sure to end with a knit purl or like a ribbed row in the main color, so that the next row would just be a knit row, and you wouldn't see, like you would only see the contrast color. If you're purling, then you would see some of the main color show up in the contrast color on that first row. So I just made sure to end the main color stripe with a ribbed row, so that the next row would be just a straight knit one. And then I just did 2 rows. So a knit one and then a ribbed one, so that when I go back to the main color, it's a straight knit row that I start with. And I'm really happy with how these turned out. I tried something a little bit different for my heel flap. I think I did my heel flaps. It's just like a slip stitch heel flap. In the past, I've done them just to 2 inches for myself, and I wanted it to be a little bit longer. So I went to 2.5 inches. This made me have to pick up too many stitches for like along here. It made it so there was a lot of stitches that I had to pick up here, and it was just, it felt like too much on my needles. It was hard to work, and I counted how many decrease rounds I would have to do to get to like my original number of stitches, and I would have had to keep my gusset going like probably out to here. So what I ended up doing was, instead of decreasing every other round for the gusset, I decreased 2 out of every 3 rounds. So I would decrease 1 round, and then just knit in the pattern the next round, and then do decrease, knit in the pattern. And it did make it a little bit bunchy after I finished the sock. Like it just didn't want to lay flat like how it is now. But after I blocked it and put it on my sock blockers, then it was fine. And when I like actually tried it on my feet, they felt fine. It didn't feel like there was like extra fat fabric anywhere, or that it was pulling in weird spots or like being too tight in weird spots. It felt like a normal sock. So I think the next time I do a heel flap, I'm going to knit it to maybe like 2.25 inches, just so there's a few less stitches to pick up along, you know, like your line here that you pick up for the gusset. I've never tried like just skipping ones to pick up along the gusset. I could have tried that actually. And maybe I'll try that next time. But now that would make me think that maybe it would be all bunchy along the heel flap. I don't know. I don't know. It's something I like about knitting, that you try things and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I don't think this is like my perfect heel just because I did have to decrease 2 out of every 3 rounds for the gusset. Yeah. And then the toe. The amount of stitches that I like as a circumference around my feet and my legs are 52 stitches. It's great for the like cuff, leg, heel, gusset, foot. But then when it comes to the toes, it's almost too tight. When I start decreasing, like I feel like it needs more room, but I don't want to knit in the pattern longer because that looks weird. And then the toe is so short. So I tried something a little bit different. I decreased, what did I do actually? I did like a regular wedge toe style decrease where you, if you're on magic loop, you knit 1, slip, slip, knit to 3 stitches left, knit 2 together, knit 1, and then do the same on the other side, on the other needle. And then I knit 2 rounds, just knit plain 2 rounds, and then did another decrease, knit 2 rounds, another decrease. And then I did that until there were 3 decreases I had to do left, 3 decrease rounds I had to do left. And then I just did 1 knit round in between the decreases to make it more like rounded instead of like longer. It's not perfect. It's okay. It just feels a little tight on my toes, I guess. So I don't know. I think it's because I have not a lot of stitches to do decreases with 52 stitches, but I still want the toe to be a little bit longer, I guess, than what I was doing before. I don't know. I'll have to, I did some research on like different ways to knit a toe, and I might try a different method next time just to see if that'll maybe work better. I haven't actually worn these socks yet, but I've tried them on and I do like how they fit. Just maybe the toe is like a little bit tight, but that's it. Oh, the one thing I do really like about this yarn, so it's the Briggs & Little Dursport yarn. It is, I think it's 80% wool, 20% nylon. And what I like about these is that I do just throw them in my washing machine with all my clothes that I wash. And I have not had any felting issues. I haven't tried with this pair, but I have another pair that I made with the same yarn, and I have not had a problem with felting. And they've actually gotten really soft with every wash. I'm like, oh, it's like kind of fuzzier and softer. Like the fibers are just really softening nicely every time I wash them, which is really cool. Because right now these feel very rustic, I guess, and like they'd be scratchy. I don't really mind it on my feet, but I know because of the other pair of socks that I made with the same yarn that these will get like really nice and soft over time and with a few washes. So those were the 2 projects that I finished this month. I'm working on 3. Oh, there's one more thing that I finished. It's not knitting, but it's knitting adjacent or related, I guess. I made a project bag, a quilted project bag. It's got like a round bottom, and then it's just goes up on the sides, has drawstring. Pretty simple. I followed a tutorial from Well Loved Knits. She made a quilted project bag that was inspired by Petite Knits project bags. I don't know if I've ever seen a Petite Knit project bag, but I saw her video about a quilted project bag, and I got a sewing machine at Christmas, and I knew I wanted to try what in my mind was a simple project. It was not that it was difficult, but just a little finicky with some parts, I guess. And if you look closely, it's not the neatest, but I like it. I found this fabric at the thrift store and it was a really fun first project. I don't know, I quite liked the design of this fabric when I was at the thrift store, but looking at it now, I kind of like the inside fabric better. You can see the quilting lines a lot better on the inside fabric than the outside. I guess I just didn't choose the right color thread for like seeing the quilting lines on the outside. But anyway, that's something else I finished last month. Yeah, a fun first sewing project. Inside of it, I have my first work in progress that I will talk about. This is a little sweater that I'm knitting for my son. Oh, I need to get the project page up. So this is the very classic sweater pattern by Freya. And as you can see, it's a cabled sweater knit bottom up, which is my first time, well, I've only done 2 sweaters, but it's my first time trying bottom up construction. It is knit with another Briggs & Little yarn. This is their Tuffy yarn, so it's, I think, yeah, 80% wool, 20% nylon, and this is in the color Blue Mix. I thought this would be a good yarn to do for a sweater for my son because since I've had good luck with washing their sport weight in the same like wool to nylon ratio, I figured this would probably be the same. Like I could put it in the washing machine and it would be fine. That's the one thing with like knitting things for kids is that they're gonna get dirty. So I want something that can be cleaned pretty easily. I am liking this pattern so far. I like the pattern. It's easy to like get in a groove and like you don't need to look at the chart or anything. You know what to do. The thing that I'm not loving about it, I'm just not loving how it looks. I know it'll probably relax a bit with blocking, but it just looks really handmade, but like not in a good way. It looks really, I don't know. I'm not loving how it's turning out. I don't know if it's the yarn. It is like an Aran weight yarn, so it is pretty thick. I'm at a point now where I need to start doing the sleeves and then attach the sleeves to the body and then keep knitting. And I've just been putting it off. I've been putting off casting on the sleeves because I'm not totally loving how it's looking. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Especially when I'm like comparing it to this sweater. I'm like, this is so beautiful and this is pretty. Like it's really nice, but it's just not giving the same effect as this. Of course, this has mohair in it, so it's gonna look fluffy and soft and everything. And this one isn't because it doesn't have that. And maybe once it's blocked, it won't seem as stiff, I guess. Like it's very stiff. Giving me a little bit of my Wednesday sweater vibes with the feeling of the yarn, which I'm not a fan of. Also, I'm not super motivated to knit the sleeves because I think I messed up. You're supposed to, it says to cast off stitches at the underarm area. So I cast off stitches, but I don't think I cast off the correct ones. Like I don't have an even amount of, or not an even amount, but I have a different number of stitches on one side of the cast off than the other. And I have it on both sides. So I don't know how I did the cast off weird. I maybe should have watched some like bottom up sweater construction videos when I was at that point. So anyway, the thought of like trying to go back and like pick up the stitches, like unbind them off is like, I don't want to do that. So I might watch a couple videos, see if I did mess up or if it's an easy fix or something, and then get on with this. But yeah, there's not much to say about this really. It's a nice project. It's going fast. I think I knit this in maybe like 3 or 4 days, this much. Ooh, one thing I do want to say is they just say to cast on like whatever amount of stitches you need for your size. I thought I would try an Italian cast on. I was following Andrea Mowry's tutorial for an Italian cast on. The first time I tried it, I forget how many stitches you have to do, but let's say it was like 225 or something. The first time I did it, she says in her video, if this is like one of your first times, maybe do it just on straight needles because it's difficult to tell. Like it's really easy for the stitches to twist around a cable, and it's hard to like know how to like get them back in the proper place. So the first time I tried it, I was just casting onto like a cabled circular needle. And yeah, I finished what I thought was the proper amount, and then I couldn't figure out which way to spin them, which way to turn them. So ripped all that out and was like, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Tried again the next day. And that time I was very careful and precise. Every 10 stitches that I cast on, I stopped and put a stitch marker so that I knew, okay, there's 10 stitches, and I knew it had to like always start with a knit stitch. So I was like, okay, there's the knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. Okay, good. We're in the pattern of an Italian cast on. So I had segments of 10 all along, all the way to 220, whatever it was. And I was like, perfect. And I like put them all the right way around, joined in the round. I knit a good like half, maybe even like almost all of the ribbed section. And then I was like, why do I keep having to like twist the upcoming stitches that are going to be knit? Why do I keep having to like twist the fabric down? And I stopped and looked at my needles and I was like, oh, I joined in the round twisted. So it will never be like, it would always be like one flipped kind of, I guess. I'll put a picture because I took a picture before I ripped it out. That was pretty disheartening because it took me a long time to do that very like meticulous, like it's not an easy cast on to do. Like you have to be very focused while you do it. At least it was my first time. So of course I had to be more focused. And then the addition of like counting every 10 stitches, putting the stitch marker, like I was so careful and somehow I still twisted it. And I was like, nope, I'm ripping it out and I'm going to try an Italian cast on for something that is either on straight needles or is much less stitches than 200 and whatever it was. I'll save that for a project that has less cast on stitches. And I ended up just doing a German longtail cast on, I think is what it's called. And I like the way it looks. I think it's still stretchy. I did it because I knew it would be stretchy. And yeah, I don't miss the way that it was looking with the Italian cast on. I actually am glad that I had to rip it out because I was thinking that the ribbing looked not tight enough. So I went down, I don't know how many needle sizes I went down, or like fractions of a needle size I went down, but I went down to a smaller needle size for the ribbing and I'm much happier with how it looks now. So even though it was like a lot of work that I had to rip out, I mean, not a lot of work in that, like, it was like days and days. It was more just like, I was so careful with the cast on and counting and making sure everything was perfect that it was sad to have to rip it out. But I do like how this looks, how this ribbing looks better. And I don't mind not having the like nice rolled over edge for the bottom of the sweater. So that is living in this project bag. Now I'm knitting this on size 5mm needles, which is the same size needles that I'm working on my green blanket for my son. So this currently doesn't have needles, and I haven't knit on it as much as I need to be if I want to be done. Okay. Yeah. I'm not knitting on it as much as I need to be if I want to be done before my son's birthday in May. This is where I was last time. So I have done like a few inches for sure, like maybe 6 inches or so. Let me measure. 7 inches. I've done 7 inches. Okay, but I think I had to do something like 4 inches a week or something, which hasn't happened. But it's slow and steady. I might just like have a burst of motivation to do it when it's like closer to his birthday and do like a whole lot more of it. Not much to say here. It's still going well. I do really like the texture of this. I love the feel of this yarn. Great knitting experience. Good, like, kind of mindless knitting. Really enjoying this. And then the last work in progress that I have, I actually just cast it on yesterday. This is a Ruffle sock by Petite Knit. And I've stopped at kind of an inconvenient place because it's inside out, because I am working on, I need to like sew down, I guess, or like knit down the top, like to make the little top. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, I need to like knit these two together so that it makes a nice like folded edge for the cuff. And so then the ruffle is like, doesn't start at the top, it starts a little bit ways down. So anyway, I have it set up to do that, but yeah, I stopped at a weird spot, I guess. I'm knitting these on 2.25mm needles. I think she says to use 2.5mm needles, but I knew that my yarn was thicker than what hers was. So I went down a needle size, and I also did like a smaller foot size than normal because I knew my yarn would be thicker, and I think I've got a good circumference for my leg and feet. Oh, maybe I can do this. This is kind of what it'll look like, I guess. So it'll have a nice rolled over edge at the cuff, and then a little ruffle that starts a little bit down. This will be my first time doing any sort of like knitting into something that you have already knit. We'll see how it goes. Oh, the yarn that I'm using. I'm using some fingering weight yarn from Old School Acres, and it's either undyed or maybe bleached white, and it's pretty thin. It's not as thin as, I forget what yarn Petite Knit says to use for this pattern, but it's like, it's not as thin as it. And then I also had leftover mohair from my Arctic Light sweater that I thought this would make it like a little bit stronger, because this is like a very soft yarn and it doesn't have any nylon in it, so it's not as strong as, like, say, these socks, I guess. So I thought the silk and mohair might make it a little bit stronger, a little more durable. And of course, it's going to make it feel like super soft and nice on my feet. So I just have those together for this. It's just the beginning. So far, I'm quite liking it. This will be my first stockinette sock. I'm thinking that because it has that folded over cuff at the top, that it will be, that it won't want to like slide down my leg as easily as what in my mind I think a stockinette sock will do. So we'll see how it goes. I am quite liking knitting on this so far. More than like this blue sweater. This is like, I'm not enjoying knitting it. Really enjoying knitting this. I enjoy knitting the green blanket as well, but it does get a little bit boring. This is just like, the yarn is so soft, and of course it's like a new project I just cast on yesterday, so how could I be bored of it already? That's it for my works in progress. I only have one knitting related acquisition that I made last month, and that is some of these tube cord things that are just like plastic tubes. They're like, I don't know if you can see, but there's like a little hole in the end. And basically you can use these for if you need to put stitches on hold, or if you need to like try something on and you don't want to lose stitches. So you can put the tube on the end of your needle, slide the stitches on, and then when you want to put it back on the needle, stick it back on the needle, slide the stitches back on the needle. And I use this for having the sleeve stitches on hold for this sweater. Worked great. I had some scrap yarn. I was like holding the sleeve stitches before these came in the mail. I just got these off of Amazon. And it came in one long cord, and I cut it into 2 lengths that would be good for sleeves, and then one longer one that would be good for like the body of a sweater, for example. So yeah, I had been using some scrap yarn for the sleeves for the Arctic Light sweater before this came in the mail, and it was fine, but it was much more difficult to put from the on hold with the scrap yarn back onto the needle. It was much more difficult than with this when I did it with the other sleeve. So good experience with these so far. I think that's everything for January 2024. Already done the first month. Like I said, I'm a little bit skeptical, like in my mind, like how can I top this sweater? It's just like, it's the perfect sweater for me. I love it so much. So I do have some plans for what sweaters I want to make next for myself. But right now I'm like, nothing's gonna beat this. This is perfection. I love it so much. So we'll see what comes of any other sweaters that I make or any other garments. I hope you got some knitting done while I chatted about all my projects that I've been working on. Have a great month, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.